We are back with Brooke a week later, and last week Brooke was coming to me with issues around trust for the most part. There were other things as well, but just the inability to trust others. And I know we did a couple of rounds of belief blasters. I had the belief that I wasn't worthy enough, and I had the belief that I couldn't trust anyone. So, welcome back, Brooke. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, and so update me a little bit, even just on those two statements. Have you noticed any shifts? How do you feel when I say them? Like, what are you seeing different, or what's changed and what hasn't, basically?
Um, so along with feeling those feelings, I also felt loneliness among them.
Okay.
Um, and I've noticed how the loneliness I felt from feeling the unwantedness or not worthy um has gotten way better. I'm not as I've noticed on my throughout the day, I'm not as sad or mopey, if that makes any sense.
That's
And
great.
like
Good.
I just feel um I just feel more happy throughout the day about myself. And um I'm going to continue doing it on trust, because for 31 years I lived with these trust issues.
Hmm.
And I've lived with, even when I was a kid, my mom would always say, you can't trust nobody, you can't trust nobody. And so I feel like she kind of planted that in my mind
Yeah, yeah.
as a child.
That's
I
fear
mean,
programming. Yeah.
yes. And so being told that all the time as a child, I've actually went to counseling before, and I've had a counselor tell me that, with my mother telling me that as a kid, she kind of planned in my brain to where she's the only one that I can trust then, and that everybody else in the world I can't trust.
Hmm.
And so I'm having to kind of break down that wall that I built with being told that all the time. And I can see where, brick by brick, it's coming down
Hmm.
since
Yeah.
I've started the click tracks. And I mean, it's a matter of just a week, I see a big difference.
Good.
So I definitely plan on continuing it, because it's helping me with so many other feelings that I have that are coming out while I'm
Yeah.
peeling this onion.
Yeah, yeah, that's what happens. As soon as you start working on one thing, then you clear that, and then the next thing that needs to be worked on shows up, and
Yeah.
either somebody will come into your life in that moment to show you what the next trigger is, or you'll just magically start worrying about the next thing. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, your brain and the universe will continue to show you what else needs to be worked on as you go.
Right. And what I love the most about these click tracks is it's literally 11, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not taking a lot of time out of your day to, if you're feeling unworthy, or if you're feeling angry or abandoned or whatever, just to fix that feeling right then and there, because it does take you out of that headspace, and you do feel a sense of relief afterwards.
Yes, yeah. And the other cool thing about it is once you get the hang of it and you know what the instructions are, you can actually skip like 2 minutes and 13 minutes into the track. 2 minutes and 13 seconds into the track is where the actual therapeutic part of the click track begins. And
Okay.
so you can basically just like get the track ready, set it to 213, close your eyes and get worked up, and then push play. And then you're only having to do 9 minutes.
That's way better than 12. I mean, either way, I can dedicate that time. That's
Yes.
awesome. I didn't know if that beginning time was important for me to look at that spot on the wall and take that deep breath and get in that mindset. But it honestly it doesn't take that long to get in that mindset.
Right,
It's pretty
right,
quick.
exactly. And I find a lot of times what happens is if you start to try to get worked up about that issue before you start the track, and then you start the instructions take you out of whatever the trigger is because you're so focused on the instructions.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning, that's fine just so you can get used to it and everything, but it's much easier to really get wrapped up in whatever the trigger is
Yep, and go straight into
just
it.
and then go straight into the therapeutic part of
Yes.
the track,
That
just
makes
straight
complete
from that
sense.
instead of getting distracted by the whole thing.
Yes.
Now, with some of the other tools, like belief blasters, you are supposed to listen to the entire track every time. But
Okay.
with the click tracks, you can skip the intro once you've got that particular set of instructions down. Like if you know what sounds to tap to, just just skip to 213 and start from there.
Perfect. Definitely. I've got it
Yeah.
memorized now.
Repetition is key.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah. So we did do a couple of belief blasters last time. I have a feeling that, you probably need a couple of more rounds of the
Definitely.
particular statements that we've already worked on, as well as a few others that I can send you. Like other women have more to offer than I do. You can always
Yes.
leave me. Um, we already did.
I
I
did
wasn't worthy enough.
I did the leaving on PS or the
Yep.
click
Yep.
tracks.
So you did the
I did
fear
that today.
of the fear of them
Yes.
leaving.
Definitely. I did that today and a few days ago because that's a deep feeling that I have. So I definitely want to try to break that down. And I do notice, I mean, even if it's, he says to do 1 to 10 on how you're feeling. And each time I do it, I do notice that it's getting less of, I mean, afterwards, I just feel relieved
Good.
and like I can go on with whatever I was going to do the rest of the day. I can just leave that behind.
Yep. Yeah. It's meant to kind of just bring you to a state of neutrality about it. So it sounds like that's
Definitely.
what's going on for you. The
Yes.
other thing that I would probably do about the leaving is to have an angry fit about all of the people who've left you or abandoned you.
I can do that. Definitely have anger.
We did talk a little bit about some anger, like right before we started recording today, and I said that that's probably a good thing for us to talk about today as well, because when I'm working with people, I always suggest doing an angry fit at each of the major players in your life, because you don't want to be holding grudges or
No.
putting up your walls with everybody,
Yeah.
even if it's somebody you're never going to speak to again. If it's somebody toxic in your life, it's okay to still cut them out. But the fact that you're holding a grudge and the fact that there's still anger and hurt and resentment and all of that, that's going to eat at you.
Right.
It's
It
not
definitely does. It's
it's
not
not
eating at them, it's
affecting
eating at
them.
me.
Right.
Right. And I need that closure. We deserve that closure.
Yeah.
So,
And, and a lot of people are resistant to doing that about their parents, especially if their parents did their best and, tried really hard to be good parents and all of that. But it's not about blaming. It's not
right.
pointing the finger and going, they were a bad parent. It's giving you or your inner child the ability to express how you felt at the time that that thing was happening.
Right.
So it's
Because at
not
that time,
about,
half the time we couldn't, we couldn't
right,
express ourselves when we were that child. We had
right.
to keep that in. And it wasn't acceptable to feel that way in a sense, you know what I mean? And we
Yeah,
had no one to go to express our feelings. And so now as adults, we're carrying that. So I definitely feel like it's important to get that off our chest and out of our mind.
exactly. Yeah. And it's not even about like, were they justified in yelling at us at a certain time? For some reason, a lot of men have trouble doing angry fits at their parents, especially if
Hmm.
their parents like did their best and are still together and all of that, because they feel like their parents did right by them and that their parents were justified in punishing them if they did something
Yes.
bad or whatever. But justified isn't one way or another. It's how did you feel at that
Right.
moment when your dad was yelling and screaming at you, or when you had to stay inside because you were grounded when you saw all your friends playing outside? How does that feel to
Right.
you as a kid? And how frustrating is that? And how powerless do you feel?
Yeah.
That's the part that needs to be expressed and felt and healed
Right.
so that you can move on and you're not applying those feelings to other scenarios that come up that feel similar now.
Right. Or like, and it affects other people in your life too. I mean, for instance, my mom, um, was, I would consider, physically abused when she was younger. I mean, she's 71 now, but back then it wasn't abuse. You know, it was a form of discipline.
Yeah,
And so she doesn't find it to be abuse that, you know, she reached across the table and she got a fork in her hand, stabbed in her hand. And she didn't find that to be abusive. And she still doesn't to this day. She's like, no, I shouldn't have reached across that table. And when we went to counseling, the counselor was like, no, that wasn't okay. They could have handled that differently. That shouldn't have happened. And but she made, you know, she has fixated in her mind that that was okay. And
right.
so then the physical abuse that I got from her growing up, I feel like contributed to that, if that makes sense, because
Yeah,
she
yeah, she
feels
justifies that because she
right.
feels like that's how you teach a child to follow through and do the things that they are supposed to do.
Right. But the
Um,
emotional burden that it puts on the child, the feeling that it gives us is not, oh, it's just awful. And I mean, I'm not placing blame. It's just I'm saying like the feeling that we get, I mean, that's not okay for us to feel that way. And so it happens and we've got to find a way to make it through that feeling and get over that. And I think this is a great way to help me with that, definitely.
yeah,
Tracks and
absolutely. Yeah, and it kind of reminds me something that I was clearing. Um, we're in the whole COVID thing right now, and so
yes.
my biggest trigger with that at this point is the the fear that it's going to go on, like that we're going to have to stay at home for 5 months, and that
Yeah.
I won't be able to go out for all of my summer adventures and things. Because usually, every chance we get, if I'm not with a client over the summer, we are hiking or going to a waterfall or going to the
Yes.
ocean or doing something in the water or getting on our paddle boards or whatever. And so just to think that that's not okay, and like, first
Right.
of all, there's plenty of space here where, like, practically everybody in the state could go out and do something in nature and still not, still be able to maintain that 6 foot radius. Um, so
Right.
should be okay to do that here. Um, so, I've got all of that going on in my head of like, what if, what if, what if? So
Yeah. I understand.
yesterday, yesterday I was PS teching that and freaking out about like, what if I can't go out, and picturing myself at my window looking out at a beautiful summer day and going, I can't go outside. I can't go out and enjoy this beautiful summer day. Like, what the hell? And then the
Yes.
the window became jail bars in my head. And then immediately shifted from jail bars to my crib when I was
Oh
a
my
baby.
word.
And it was this sense of, let me out. I'm missing out on something. So when you're a baby, you want to be a
Right.
part of like everything that's going on around you, and you can't understand why your parents will leave you in the crib for whatever reason. Maybe they
Yeah.
need some privacy, maybe it's your bedtime and you just haven't fallen asleep yet. Maybe, like, who knows? But
Right.
you're in your crib going, let me the hell out. I don't want to be in here. And so there's a sense of like powerlessness to that and feeling trapped in that. And that's what was coming up for me when I was getting this feeling of like, I'm not going to be able to go outside this summer. So,
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I'm the same as you where I like to go out and I usually go to Colorado to the mountains or I go to Florida to the beach and my spring break here actually this week is spring break and I was
oh
supposed to be in
boy.
Florida all week and that got canceled. I was like, I don't
Uh,
want to go with all this going on. And then I graduate in August. And so I'm having the same thing. I'm gonna have to PS tech all this because I'm graduating in I'm graduating in May and I'm worried that I'm not gonna be able to walk down and get my diploma. And then in April I have 7 poems that are being published. And so now I'm worried that I'm not gonna have because we're supposed to have a gathering for it, and I'm worried that that's not gonna happen. And I mean, it's just one thing after another. I feel like this is the year where I felt like it was going to be my year, you know?
mhm.
And now I feel like everything is just falling apart and that's corona is preventing it all.
Yeah. It's such a huge letdown.
And I'm an outside person like you are and it's sad to think that I'm going to be stuck inside all the time. And then
Mhm.
I live alone and I mean, yeah, I have a dog and a couple cats, thank goodness. At least they can keep me company. But just being alone all the time, I mean, I call my mom and I'm like, geez, it's boring here. Can't really play cards with myself.
Thank
But
God
it's
for
all good.
Zoom.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's tough, and I really feel like this whole COVID thing is just teaching us to surrender and give up control, and that's not something that you can just make a conscious mindset shift about. You can't just sit there and consciously go, "Okay, I'm going to give over control of everything to the universe and just trust that everything's going to go okay and smoothly in my favor." Because we've got all these subconscious fears and all these subconscious wounds and all of this stuff playing out underneath that. And that's what's really making us resist it. So we have to work through our resistances. We have to work through how it feels to not be in control, to feel powerless, to feel
Oh,
like we can't control what's going to occur. Um, to take care of any fears. And if you already have trust issues, it can definitely feel like, oh, the universe is out to get me. Like
right,
I can't trust the universe either.
right.
So,
Piling on.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot to work through in order to get to that place where we can really surrender and trust and just go with the flow, and to know on a deep level that we are being brought to something better, even though it looks scary and awful right now and feels like everything we've known is falling apart. That all of this it's like a purging of the old energy and the heavy energy and all of that, which it's kind of sad to see it go, and it's going it's happening in kind of a scary way.
Right.
um that it needed to happen. The earth needs this refresh, and humanity needs this refresh. And
Yeah. I mean, just the pollution itself and how everybody's staying at home in other countries, and you see how much the pollution has went down is
mhm,
incredible.
yeah.
I mean, that's a little off topic, but I'm just
Yeah, yeah, it is amazing though. So, um, back to everything you've been working on. I think I wrote down some things that I had suggested for you. So, doing the click track on abandonment and the fear of what if they leave me, what if the next person leaves me, and the history of all of the leavings, which you said you worked on today.
Mhm.
I would still do anger about that too. How could you leave me? Uh,
Definitely.
And you can do that as a whole theme. Like it can just be an angry theme about how could they leave me? How could this person leave me? And how could this person leave me? And, why would you put me in this position, universe or soul or whatever?
Sounds good.
um, I mean, you can certainly do an angry fit also at each of the major people who have abandoned you or hurt you or whatever. And I would definitely do that as well. But I think just that connected theme of all of the abandonments would be another good one to do besides the individual angry fits at the people.
Sounds great. Definitely.
And then also, I don't know if you've done the unwanted round or the cheating and lying round yet.
I have not done those two. I stuck with the abandonment, lonely, and I did the one angry one
Okay.
over me and my mom.
Yep. Yep. Well, it's amazing. You mentioned before we got on the call some of the shifts that you've been seeing already, as far as, just feeling more at peace and even less reactive. Before you even did the anger towards your mom, that you, like, even when she was doing the behavior she tends to do,
Yes.
that you were automatically less reactive to it than you normally would have been.
Yes, and I hadn't even done a click track on that particular thing yet. But when it happened, I instantly thought about my subconscious mind, and I was like, you know that saying that you say, get out of your what is it again? Get out of your head or into your get out of your mind.
Yeah.
Help me out here. That's
Oh,
what I
how do
felt.
I say that?
I love that phrase.
Yeah. Let's
But
get you
that's
out of your head so you can stop going out of your mind.
yes, I
Yeah.
love that. And like I felt like I was out of my head in a sense, because usually when my mother would, so what she does, I'll explain. So what she does is, um, we'll be talking to somebody, and she'll say something that makes me look bad. I feel like, or kind of puts me down. For instance, this particular situation, we saw someone, and we were talking about the town that I was from, and I was an EMT and firefighter on the department for a little over 6 years. And we were talking about that, and this lady was also from the town that we were talking to. And I was like, yeah, I miss it because I was born and raised there. And then my mom's like, but you didn't like it when you lived there. And I was like, why would you say that? And so I just, usually I would get upset, and then after the other person would leave, I would confront my mom and be like, why would you make me look bad? We're family. We should make each other look good. I just feel like that was unnecessary. I don't know why you'd say that. And I'd come off very uh strong, I guess you could say, because I was hurt.
Hmm.
Because I feel like you're someone that cares about you shouldn't make you feel that way or
Right.
talk about you like that to someone else. And so, but this time was, I don't know why, but it was completely different. I mean, I was just thought about my subconscious mind, and I was like, I would usually do this, but I'm not even going to do that. Like, and it was just, I just stood there in amazement. And I was like, and so then after we got done talking, I didn't even mention it to her. Usually I would say something to her, like I said, but I didn't mention anything to her about it. I just kind of let it go, and that was that. And it saved a headache, to be honest, April. It saved a headache
Hmm.
because usually then we would just bicker and go back and forth, and we left, and we were on good terms. And she doesn't even know that, anything happened. Because she
Right.
doesn't know. It's like she doesn't know that that affects me, even though I tell her. And then when I do tell her, she doesn't feel that I should feel the way that I do,
Hmm.
or that my feelings are not justified.
Yep.
And so I'm just not even, with not even reacting, it just helped out a lot.
Hmm. Yes. And
That
I
makes
really
sense.
feel like the whole trigger there for you is having your feelings dismissed.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Because
exactly it.
because
Everybody,
when she corrected you, it was because you were saying something about how you feel, and she was immediately saying, no, you don't feel that way, you feel this way.
right,
But the same thing with when you tell her how you feel about that, she's telling you, no, you shouldn't feel that way, you should feel this way. And so
right.
there's a lot of that, and I would assume that that's probably something that has gone on
Oh,
throughout
it's
your
gone.
entire life, not only with
Yes.
her, but with ex-boyfriends and
Definitely. And it started obviously with her because she's the only one I had for the first 7 years of my life. Mainly, obviously, besides, siblings here and there, but they were all at least 16, 17 years older than me. So they were out of the house by the time I was born. But it was mainly just me and her. And so she was the, main one, but there's obviously been others over the years. But yeah, I feel like since I was a kid, my feelings have always been dismissed. And I was put in counseling even when I was in fifth grade. And I feel like even that particular counselor even kind of dismissed my feelings, I felt like, as a child. And I felt like at that point that he listened to my parents more and didn't yeah, just dismissed my feelings, didn't care about how I felt as the child. And then as I've grown older, I found a counselor that I was going to, and they helped me out a lot with that my feelings were justified and that a child shouldn't feel that way. And that, just hearing that, gave me a sense of relief, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
But
just
yeah, I
knowing,
completely
like
agree with you.
being validated is really important.
Yes. And I feel like I never had gotten that before until I met with that particular counselor. And it was just a big relief. And
Mhm.
then I had to bring in my mom, and because we had to get over the childhood physical abuse that I had. And my mom didn't feel like, she said she didn't know that it was that big of a deal
Yep.
and that it affected me that much, but it definitely did. I don't know
Yeah.
if I should go on the
No,
like the story.
I definitely would use the click track to have an angry fit about the theme in your life of people dismissing your thoughts and feelings. And just start with whatever is the most recent raw feeling of that or example of that, and then just listing like it happened here, and this person did it to me, and this person did it to me, and my mom did it to me every day of my life. And you're
Right,
just kind of listing all the examples you can possibly think of that point to that feeling dismissed and not having your own thoughts, opinions, feelings validated in all of those different areas, with a counselor, with your mom, with exes, with work,
right.
whatever.
Like in this particular thing, I would usually give it a 10, where my mom made me feel that way talking about where I was from with this other person. Um, it would usually be a 10. I would just lose it. And then after our first session, after doing some of the click tracks, not even about that, like I said, it wasn't even about that particular situation, just knowing about my subconscious mind and everything, I would say it went down to a 7. And then after I did the click tracks, it I think it went down to like a 3. I feel like now if it happens, I'll notice it, kind of like I did. I noticed it, but I feel like each time that I do a click track, it's getting the longer, like I'll hold on to it less, if that makes sense.
Yep, exactly.
So it's like, oh, that happened, and then I'm over it. I mean, it's amazing how they work.
Hmm. Yeah, it is pretty incredible. So, we had talked a little bit about getting a little bit more background from you. And I know that you did a round on the abandonment piece. And I'm interested to get a little bit of like, what were those pivotal moments for you of abandonment? What were the main ones that really jumped out at you? Like, what came up while you were doing the click track on it? Which ones you tend to kind of ruminate on or fixate on? And if you look at it now, if those appear or feel any different to you than they did before. So go ahead.
Okay, definitely. All right, we'll start from the beginning, from when I was a child. So I would say the first time that I had felt abandoned was, um, I mean, obviously I couldn't feel it at 2 years old, but as I've grown older, um, my dad stopped coming around by the time I was 2. Prior to that, actually, my mom and my dad was married, April, to
Mm,
someone else,
okay.
and had an affair with my mother. And then Brooke came about. Hello. And my mom had, when my mom found out that she was pregnant, she actually went to an abortion clinic to have an abortion done. And from what I understand, you meet and you have like a consultation, and then you go back for the actual appointment later. So she went in for the consultation, set up her appointment and everything to have it done. And then the second appointment, when she went in to have it done, she couldn't follow through. Um, since she had 3 other siblings, I believe that's what had something to do with it. I mean, since I had 3 other siblings, sorry.
Mm, yeah.
Um, I feel like that really had something to do with why she couldn't follow through. Thank goodness, or else I wouldn't be here. But then after that, then my after she stopped being involved with my biological dad, then he stopped coming around, and that was at the age of 2. So I feel that that he abandoned me then. I mean, I feel like my mom didn't want me to begin with for wanting to go in for an abortion because we're a town of 200 people. Word gets around, and she didn't really want that stress, drama, and everything. So I can understand where she was coming from. But then, like you've said before, that fetus um shares that energy and feels that energy. And so I feel like that's taken a toll on me over the years, along with then my dad abandoning me. And then so I had my mom for the first 7 years of my life. My siblings were all, like I said, 16, 17 years older than me at least. So I was the only one at home with my mom. And having her 100% of the time for like the first 7 years of my life. And then she started dating who is now my stepdad when I was 7. And we moved out with him. It was a completely different lifestyle, completely. I feel like he took my mom away, if that makes sense. Like he was the shiny toy. He never wanted kids. As soon as he got out of high school, he actually took care of it so he couldn't have kids. And so I always played outside mainly by myself. We lived on an acreage. We moved out with him and he lived on an acreage. So I mainly entertained myself outside. Well, I felt like she spent more time with him. And that was difficult for me to understand, having my mom 100% of the time and then having this new person come in and kind of take her away. So I felt like there was an abandonment there. And then as I got older, my first relationship, first serious relationship, first involvement, he cheated on me with numerous women that I had found out about.
Mm.
And I won't go into depth on how I figured it out, but uh, it wasn't pretty. And that hurt a lot because I had always wanted to stay with the person that my first everything. I'd always wanted to stay with that person. And the fact that I felt like he abandoned me then for a bunch of different women. And it was just one thing after the next, and I just felt now every relationship that I have, whether it's friends or um, intimate relationships, I feel like I'm going to be abandoned. And basically I know I'm just setting myself up for failure thinking that, because that's not healthy to think, well, this person's going to leave me eventually for someone else, or or something. So
But
it's not a
it's
good
pretty
feeling.
tough, like trying to get yourself out of that pattern when it's all you've ever known. And
Definitely.
if that keeps happening to you, then you're going to start expecting it.
Right.
So
When the
that's,
closest people to you do it, I feel like someone that's not that close to you that decides to come into your life is going to do it as well. If
mhm,
that makes sense.
right. Yeah. I mean, if the people who are supposed to stick by you can't even stick by you,
Right.
then how are you going to expect anybody, peripherally to stick by you too?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's just I don't know how to get over I don't know how to get over that. I do feel that these tracks are helping with it. The abandonment is slower, I'd have to say, than my anger one, than my anger
Yeah.
one with my mom. Um, but I do
Well,
feel a sense of relief.
there's a
But
couple of different components to it, I think. So there's just the abandonment part overall, but there's also the other things or other people being chosen over you, which causes you to compare yourself to others. So that's a theme to clear.
yes,
And then we already talked about how much your story resonates with mine. And so dealing with the unwanted theme throughout your life. So I feel like dealing with those will go a long way toward helping to release those wounds and to stop creating that as an expectation and as an energy that you put out to others. When you're attracting
right,
new people into your life, you don't want to be, putting that billboard out that says, people abandon me. People choose other people over me. I'm
right.
unwanted. you
Come on
know,
over. Oh,
come use
yes.
me up and spit me out.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's great. No. Oh,
Right.
that's
And
awful.
I think probably there may be also a belief that you deserve to be abandoned. So I'm going to write that down. uh,
Right.
even though consciously you clearly don't believe that.
Right. I feel
Um,
like, I honestly, April, I feel like I have a lot to offer. I feel like I'd be a wonderful mother. I feel like I'd be a wonderful girlfriend. And I feel like I'm a good child. I feel like I'm a good friend. But I feel that others don't feel that way, if that makes sense.
mhm,
And even though, they can verbally say that they do, I feel a lot of times that their actions don't resonate the same, if that
yep,
makes sense. Don't
yeah.
you know? And
Like they can
that's
say
what hurts the
anything,
most.
they can say all kinds of positive things, but their actions
Yeah,
show that they don't actually believe that.
right. Because I'm like, if you felt that way, then you wouldn't do this to me, or you wouldn't make me feel this way. You wouldn't hurt me. If you loved me, you wouldn't cheat on me. If you loved me, you wouldn't abuse me. And I forgot to mention that, but when my mom never physically abused me as a child, um, when I was 1 to 7 years old. But when we moved out with my stepdad, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I did, I feel like, act out to get her attention because I feel like that's the only way that I got her attention, April. And so I would act out. I would talk back, or as she would always say, talk back, or whatever the case. And my stepdad, again, who didn't want any children, um, would tell her, "You're not going to put up with that, are you? You need to do something about that," and encouraged her not to have me be that way. So then my mom felt, as she said in our counseling session, she felt obligated to make him happy by trying to correct me. But with her being abused as a child, then she abused me. So she would, I don't know how much in depth I should go, but she would, take her nails and grab my arm and just slide them down it to where my arms would bleed. And she would fist punch me in the face. And I mean, it was very, it was a bad feeling. And, but with all that, like, I love my mom the most out of anybody in the world. And I would have her back 100%. But it was definitely not a good feeling to have that come from someone that's supposed to love you.
Right.
And um I personally don't feel like that abuse was justified. I mean, she might, but I don't feel that way. And it worries me, April, to have kids because I don't want to be that way to my kids. I want to break that
Hmm.
because I don't want what her parents did to her and then what she did to me to be taken on to another generation,
Right.
because no child deserves to feel that way. That physical abuse or that emotional abuse that it that
You
it
shouldn't
it
feel
gives you.
unsafe
Right.
with your
And
family.
then she would make this threat to me. There's a place called, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. It's called Boys Town. And she would always threaten me that I would get sent there if I said anything and that I wouldn't see my family anymore. And so uh having that threat all the time, it scared me because I was really close to my sister and my nephews and I didn't want to not see them again. And so I never would say anything. And one day at school, I got called down to the principal's office and they asked me about, because I had scrapes on my arms, and they had asked me about that. And I lied and said that I fell down the stairs at home because I didn't want I didn't want to be sent away like I had been threatened before. So that was difficult as a kid. But by the time I became, I'd say 14 or 15 years old, I defended myself. I began defending myself. And so if she would shove me, I'd shove her. And that's not okay, though. It's not okay. But I felt like that's the only thing I could do to not feel the physical pain. I still felt the emotional pain in it because she was still wanting to do it. But I felt defending myself it was less physical pain. And so then I turned to that. And then I ended up moving to Georgia with my sister. And then my mom, I guess, was very lonely and cried all the time that I wasn't there. And I missed her too. I mean, me and her are really close, even though all this,
Mm-hmm.
we're still really close. And, um, but that's, I don't know. I think that pain of feeling that abuse, both the emotional aspect of it, mental and physical, all from the one person I felt like I had all of my trust in,
Yep.
is what really shattered me.
Mm-hmm. And that's a click track right there. Many rounds as you need to remove that pain of all the things that she did and said.
I'm writing this down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm making notes too, so I'll be able to send you a list of things that I suggest click tracking and belief blasting, but that's a really big one. And the fact that you're able to bring up this much emotion with it while you're talking about it is should be pretty easy to do some good clearing work on that. Because usually the more worked up you can get about it, the easier it is to clear. So
Definitely.
yeah,
Well,
but
good.
definitely definitely a good round to do. Um, there was something else that I wrote down too.
Can I say one last thing? Sorry.
Yes, yeah, of
So
course.
when we went to counseling for this, the part that got me was, we stopped going, obviously. But the part that got me was when this got brought up, she's like, I didn't know it affected you that much. And I expressed to her that it did, and I was crying and everything. And she said, well, there's not much I can do now. I mean, I'm sorry. And I felt like that wasn't a meaningful sorry, you know? And so then again, my feelings are being set aside. I mean, I feel like they're not being thought about, you know?
Right.
And she the day after, she texted me and she said, so are you over it? It's a new day. That's in the past. You need to let that go. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That many years of that, and I just need to let it go?
Wow.
So
Yeah. And I think that on her end, she's probably not very proud of it and doesn't want it dwelled on and doesn't want to look bad
definitely.
herself. But it's not on you to be the one to make her feel better
Right.
or to,
And she
say,
can't.
you don't need to say to her, I forgive you. Like,
Right.
the work that you're doing is for you, it's not for her. And
Right.
she needs to do her own work to
I
feel
agree.
better about herself and her actions.
Right. I
But
agree.
going back to the fear that you would abuse your own kids in the
Yeah.
future, I would definitely click track that. Um, but let me just make a note of that. Fear of abusing kids. All right. As a point of reassurance, it is highly unlikely that you would treat your children that way because she justifies that. She justifies her parents' actions, that they did that to her.
Yes. And
She
I don't
sees it
justify hers.
right.
Oh, amen. Oh, thank you, April. That just hearing that's a big relief, because I mean there's a reason I'm 31 and don't have kids, not to mention Mr. Right hasn't come around. But uh I'm working on that through these tracks too, cuz my abandonment things with men, but knowing that about kids is relieving, cuz if I do find the right guy, then I mean I've always wanted a family of my own, so that's relieving to know I won't be carrying that on.
Right.
Because
And
yeah, I don't justify that.
yeah, and you'll have the tools that if your kids make you angry and trigger you,
Yes, I
you
can go
can
on here.
actually clear it, have an angry fit at your kids, and be able to just calmly deal with whatever it is that's going on instead of being
Yes,
triggered by your kids. And
right.
Kids are a big trigger, especially when you've had your feelings dismissed over and over and over again, and kids aren't listening to you.
Oh boy.
That brings up that trigger all over again. So the fact that you're doing this work now, and you'll be able to clear that as a trigger by looking at all of the individual things from your past where your feelings were dismissed, it will be far less triggering in the future. When people tend to do that, you'll just be able to go, you know what, that's not okay with me, without it bringing you into a fight or flight kind of reaction.
Yes.
And you'll
Oh,
just be able to
perfect.
kind of set a clear boundary and just be like, nope, instead of I'm going to explode and
Right.
cry or scream or yell or beat you or
Yes.
whatever.
That's me 100%, April. That's me. Yesterday, I had a friend come over, and my friend was explaining to me about he was taking pictures with my dog and everything, and then he's like, "Your dog needs a bath." And I'm like, "He just had a bath 2 days ago. What are you talking about?" He doesn't have any dogs. He's never had a dog or any animal. And I'm like, and it's an inside little Shih Tzu,
Yep.
and he doesn't. I'm like, he doesn't. So here I am sniffing him, and I'm like, he doesn't have a smell. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And but I got super defensive, and I was like, why would someone say that? Like, why would you be like, your dog smells? You need to give him a bath. Like, if I see someone and they're heavier, I'm not gonna be like, hey, you should take a walk around the block. Or like, why would you say that? You don't say that. That's not okay. I don't understand why. I would not even imagine, I wouldn't even think about that, let alone say something.
Yes.
So,
So that's another trigger that comes up for people. So a lot of times triggers come from things that have happened to us in the past. But there's another trigger that sneaks up on a lot of people. And so when they're looking for roots in their past of like, why does this bother me? They can't find it,
yes,
because it's more about, why is this person allowed to do this thing or behave this way or talk like that when I would never, when I was
yes,
never allowed
right. I
to
wouldn't
act that
imagine doing
way,
that.
and I work so hard not to be that way.
Right.
How dare they? So
Yes, I
that's
want to lift people up, April. I don't want to put people down. Why would you say something negative like that? My
yeah.
goodness.
So that is a trigger of like, how dare they be so negative or critical when I work so hard not to make people feel that way. So that's a good
Yes.
also round to do. How dare they? Okay.
Well, we got a list, girl.
Yep. Well, everybody, everybody has a list, a page long at least, and you'll keep adding to it as you clear things away. But yeah, so I think these are a good start as far as kind of working through the rest of what's going on. But the amount of progress you've seen already and the amount of shifts you've seen already is awesome. It's outstanding. I love it.
Yes, I love it too. Oh, it feels great. I mean, it's so relieving. And the fact that I can see a change now, I know it's only going to get better, you know? I
Right.
mean, it's only been, I did the click tracks before we had our first meeting,
Hmm.
a few days before that. But even in a week and a half's time, the difference that I see is amazing. And so I look forward to all the changes that are yet to come.
Right. Yes. And I'd love, if at some point you want to send in an update or any further questions, you can always send in a question for the podcast. Or maybe if you run into any snags, like if there's a particular issue that you want to work on, we could always do another episode on a particular issue that's coming up for you. So feel free to reach out if you need to do another round on
Perfect.
something and
Definitely.
want some help with that. And of course, I'm always open to working privately with people too if they want to do that. So whatever you need,
Yes,
I'm here.
definitely. I appreciate that, April. You've been a big help already, so I
Awesome.
just appreciate your willingness to help everyone. It's great.
I love it.
Giving back to giving back to people even gives you I mean, it makes us feel good,
Yeah, it
as people, whether you're helping someone to carry their groceries or whether you're helping me with these trials from when I was a kid up until now.
right.
I mean, no matter how big the impact you're making, it just feels good to know you're helping somebody. So, and then
Exactly.
it makes me feel good that you're helping me. So it's great. I appreciate it.
It's so rewarding to be able to help people change their emotional lives and to know how much that filters down into their relationships and their interactions with other people, their physical health and all of that stuff. Like just the tip of the iceberg, making that emotional improvement, which alone is priceless, and then being able to
Yes.
know that there's this ripple effect in so many other ways. it's
Right.
it's incredible. So it does, it warms my heart, and it's a big reason why I do what I do, and why I'm constantly talking about doing this work, and why I can't shut up about PS Tech. And like when I'm
Right.
on social media and I just talk about it every day and posting about this
Yes.
every day, it's like I just want whoever is meant to work with these tools to know that they're available, so that they can get relief too.
Right. Get relief and be the better them that they can be. I
Hmm.
mean, if you can get over all this, life is so much brighter.
It
I mean,
really
even in
is.
just in the week and a half, it's so much brighter. And it's just I'm way more happier even waking up and doing what I
Wow,
need to do. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but
that's great.
there's definitely a shift
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
positive direction.
Yeah. And that's pretty amazing, because I feel like for me, it took it took a couple years of steady work on myself to get rid of that perpetual knot in my stomach, or the dark cloud I would wake up with every morning. But just when I first started working with these tools, and having those obsessive thoughts disappear, felt like a huge weight lifted off of me.
Yes.
But there were still other things that needed to be kind of slowly chipped away at.
Definitely. There's always going to be something like you said earlier. And now I got a list of more from today, so this will be great.
Yep.
But what's great is that I mean, it's sad to say, but the past 2 weeks with the coronavirus and having to be stuck in the house has given me a lot of time to dedicate towards myself and my well-being and my emotional state and apply these click tracks and to do them and apply them to my daily lives and situations. And so I feel like that's why I'm getting more of a I feel like that's why it's working for me faster than what I had expected,
Hmm.
because I've been at home the whole time because my job's closed,
Yep.
and you don't want to go out because you don't want to get the coronavirus. And so while I'm sitting at home, I'm like, oh, why not do why not do the click track on this? And then I end up going out and going for a walk, a nature walk with my mom, and that's when that thing happened. And then uh I didn't affect me as much, and I was like, oh my word. And so being locked in has definitely personally helped me be able to keep my mind on it and do it regularly,
Hmm.
which is why I feel like for me it's helping faster. And also those feelings have been kind of open for a while since I went to counseling. I went
Right.
to like 3 different counselors throughout my life, so they've kind of been opened up before. It's not like this is my first time doing it. So I feel like it's easier for me to open up, which is personally better for me than using these tracks, because then it's
Right.
easier for me to know what I'm feeling or how I felt and to
Yeah.
express it when I'm doing them.
And that is who tends to benefit most from doing the PS Tech work, or people who've already been going to therapy, or reading a lot of self-help books, or doing a lot of spiritual practices, because they know how they should be feeling, they know how they should be reacting, they know all the benefits to doing that stuff. They just can't figure out how to get rid of that knee-jerk reaction, or that like in the moment trigger. And that's what
Yes.
this finally does, is creates that last final shift, where if someone hasn't done a lot of that conscious work, then they don't understand why it's a benefit to them to forgive or let go of something. They don't see the benefit in shifting to a more positive mindset in order to manifest what they want or whatever. So I feel like this work, it can work on anyone, but you also have to kind of be consciously mentally ready for it and wanting it before, you can really step in and do it and follow through.
Right.
Well,
And I've been wanting it. It's just that counselor was on the right track, I feel like. But I don't have health insurance, and so paying $100 for 1 hour session is out of my price budget.
mhm.
And so something had to give, and that had to be it, sadly. And with the click tracks being free, I was like, what can it hurt? You
Right,
know?
right.
And then seeing a difference, I'm just amazed.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
I mean, I'm amazed that they're free. It's awesome.
Yeah, he wanted people who couldn't afford therapy or weren't benefiting from their current therapy to be able to have access to tools that would actually completely obliterate their fears, phobias, traumas, things like that. So he actually designed it for people with severe PTSD and severe phobias and things of that nature. So these really can work on big issues that, a lot of therapy can't seem to touch or takes years and years to shift. This can create kind of an instant shift in it, which is pretty amazing.
Yes.
And he just wanted that to be available to anybody.
I think it's
Now,
amazing.
he has created some other tools, like, there's Belief Blasters and PS Tech Positive and stuff like that, but he also has an updated version of the click tracks called PS Tech 2015 that is even more like intense and convoluted, and you have to switch hands halfway through and all this stuff, but it's a
Oh,
little bit
wow.
more effective even than the original click track.
Oh
So
my
he
word.
does have like a
Awesome.
whole other set, if you ever want to upgrade or you feel like you need to take it to the next level. But all of his tools are so affordable. It's, pretty
Yes.
amazing that, you've got this tool for the rest of your life. And, it costs it costs like a fifth of what most people's programs cost to be able to do kind of online programs and things that make hardly any dent in what this makes a dent in very quickly.
Right. And this is right at your fingertips. Whenever
Right.
you need it, you can just turn it on, take your 11 minutes or 9 minutes and some
Yeah.
seconds
Yep.
and get it done.
Right. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, was something you said earlier brought this up for me with validation. So,
Yes. I
how
always feel like I have
important
to be validated.
Yeah, how important it is to feel people validate your feelings.
Mhm.
So that's a beautiful part of therapy, and that really honestly should be part of most friendships and stuff. Just
And
like
yes, I
validating
feel
each
so
other
too.
and all of that. And of course calling each other on your bullshit if, if there's toxicity or whatever. But um what's really interesting about the click tracks is that in essence they are invalidating some of your feelings, because he'll be like, this is something that may or may not have happened, or you never really needed to worry about this thing. So
Yes.
it seems like some of his wording is invalidating of your feelings. And a therapist wrote into him at some point and said, all of my work to date has been about trying to validate people who've been through difficult things. So, why would I recommend that they use a tool that's invalidating to them? And his
Oh.
response is, do they want relief or do they want validation? And so
Mm.
it's basically, this is what your brain needs to hear in order to get relief from the pain. So,
Right.
on the conscious level, when you're having a conversation with somebody, absolutely nurture them, validate them, be like, wow, that really sucks. You've been through a lot. That was really hard. But when you're working with the subconscious mind, you have to convince the subconscious mind that it's safe
Right.
and that fixating on that thing isn't serving any purpose at all. So,
Yeah.
it's
That's
great
how
to get
I
it off your chest. It's great to
yeah.
be heard, but then you have to let it go. And
I
if
didn't even take
it's
it at like that. I mean, like that person said. I didn't even take it like that because I felt that he was justifying my feelings and saying, okay, you felt that way for this long. Now it's time to release it. Now it's time to let it go.
yeah,
It doesn't matter. It never mattered. Just let it go. Kind of feeling
right.
like I was dwelling on it, but it wasn't necessary to be dwelling on. because I don't deserve it. I deserve better. So I felt it as a positive versus I never even thought of it like that. But
Yeah,
I feel like for me, he helped me in being more of a positive, like,
hmm
girl, you didn't deserve that. You let that go.
right, right. Yeah, and that's kind of how I take it too. But when I really listen in, I'm like, I can see where people would see this as invalidating. And what's kind of cool about the whole thing is if you have a theme in your life of feeling invalidated, you can complain about him invalidating
Oh,
you as part of your process, and he'll
oh,
still clear it. Like, it's
that's awesome.
so, when you're complaining about, like, my mom always invalidated my feelings, and this therapist invalidated my feelings, and now this guy is invalidating my feelings, and, like, just kind of like acknowledging all the different things. What's really cool about the click track is that anything you're in resistance to about it, you can think about that while you do the track, and it'll just take care of that too. Like, a lot of people don't like his accent, or they don't like how overwhelming it is, or they don't like having to feel their
Oh,
negative feelings while they do the track. And so I'll have them complain about having to feel their negative feelings while they do the click track, or complain about how overwhelming the process is, or whatever.
it
And
is
then
overwhelming sometimes. Like,
yeah.
I'm clicking this hand, and then I'm like, oh my word, it's the other sound. But then I'm like, no, 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 your feelings, your feelings.
And that's exactly how it's designed. It's supposed to feel that way. It's supposed to be that way. But if that makes you not want to do the process,
Oh no.
then that's something that needs to be cleared. So you can complain about how overwhelming and confusing it is, and then you'll be neutral about that, and you'll be much more likely and able to do the work. So,
I definitely look forward to doing it because from how I feel at the beginning to how I feel at the end of that 11 minutes and or 9 minutes if I skip,
mhm,
it's it's a completely different feeling. The amount of relief I feel at the end and how my number goes down from 10 to, whether it be 8 or 5 or whatever. The relief, it's like, oh, all right, now I can continue on with my day. And so I look forward to it because I'm like, I got 9 minutes here I can spare. Let's get it done. Let's do it.
exactly. Yep. Wherever we can fit it in, and anytime we're not feeling how we want to feel, it's perfect. It's a great
Yes,
way to just kind of drag yourself out of the muck.
definitely.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I just want to quickly kind of go over the recommendations that I have for you, just for people who have similar backgrounds and similar issues to what you've been through, so that they have also a good idea of what I'd recommend to work on in order to kind of clear all of this up. But I will also send you an email with this list, so you don't have to, like, quickly write it down or anything. But
Okay, okay. Perfect.
so what I wrote down in the first visit was to do a belief blasters on, I had the belief other women had more to offer than I did. I had the belief that they would all leave me. And then the ones we did was, I had the belief that I wasn't worthy enough, and I had the belief that I couldn't trust anyone. The click
Yes.
tracks that I suggest from last time was the abandonment, what if they leave me fear, but I added on today the anger of
Mhm.
people leaving you and abandoning you, the theme in your life of people cheating or lying, the theme
Yes.
of feeling unwanted, doing an angry fit at each of the major players in your life. And then from today, these are belief blasters. They would choose other people over me, or they would choose other people or things over me. Uh,
Mhm.
I had the belief that he took my mom away.
Yes.
I had the belief that I deserved to be abandoned.
Yeah.
I had the belief that people didn't see my value.
Yes. That's a good one.
Acting out was the only way to get attention.
Mhm.
It wasn't okay to talk about what happened to me.
Right.
Now, going back to the deserving to be abandoned one, real quick, I just wanted to say that part of you believes that and part of you doesn't. And
Right.
so you have to let the part of you that believes that thing be the one to have this fit. Like,
Okay.
so it's like, you're going to ignore and put on the back burner the part of you that doesn't believe that you deserve to be abandoned. But the child part of you that kind of took that in as programming needs to have their say. Like, I feel like I deserve to be abandoned because my mommy wanted to abandon me and my daddy abandoned me, and so just
Right.
kind of letting that part of you show all the evidence, and it's like, well, I must deserve it if all those people are doing it. So that's who needs to come through when you're doing that.
When I'm
'Cause
doing it, is it okay for me to ask, like, why? Does
mhm,
that make sense? Because
yeah,
the last time I did it, I was like, why would you do that to me? Like, why would you abandon me? Why would you make me feel that way? Why would you
mhm,
make me feel alone? And so I kept
yep,
saying, I mean, in my mind,
right.
I kept saying that when I was thinking about that and feeling those feelings.
Yeah, yeah, and you would definitely do that during the click track.
Okay.
And during belief blasters, what you'd be doing is over and over again, I had the belief that I deserved to be abandoned. I had the belief that I deserved to be abandoned. But you'd be kind of like acknowledging in your head the proof because, you had been abandoned or almost abandoned by each of these people. So kind of taking it on as a belief about yourself that, even though it really isn't about you that they did that. it's
Right.
it's about them and their own problems and their own limitations and their own needs, and their own selfishness. But
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
um, there was something else that I wanted to add about your mom. There was another belief. Hopefully, I think of it. Um, it was about your mom and the abuse. I don't know. Hopefully, I'll think of it again. But um, okay, on to the click tracks. So, using the click track to replay your mom's abuses, like we talked about, not being allowed to speak up. So, anytime that it wasn't okay for you to speak your truth, uh, fear of abusing your own kids. So,
Yes.
what if you lose control and hurt them or lash out at your spouse or anything like that?
Right.
And then doing a round on how dare they be negative or critical when I work so hard to never be that way and to try to keep things positive and
Yes, definitely. I try.
yeah. Oh, and then also a click track on the theme of people leaving you for others. So
Yeah,
people choosing other people or other things over you. And it doesn't always
definitely.
have to even be for other people. Sometimes it can be for alcohol. Sometimes it can be for work. If your dad worked all the time, was a workaholic, then you may have like a theme of, oh, dad always abandoned us for work. Even though he was doing the best he could to support his family, that can leave the child with feelings of abandonment or work being chosen over you kind of thing. So you want to
Right.
look for anything that feels similar to that because it doesn't always have to be about other people. It can also be other things like whatever their band-aid is for their own pain.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right,
Thank
so I
you.
will send that list along to you, but I really appreciate you coming and doing the recap and sharing your progress so far with us, and I look forward to future updates.
Yes, thank you so much for having me again, April.
All right, have a great week.
You too, thanks.